I can think of no one with the integrity, no one more committed to the fundamental principles that make this country what it is, than my good friend, my late wife's great friend, Joe Biden. I know Joe. We know Joe. But most importantly, Joe knows us.
Now that was a powerful endorsement. With us now from Charleston, South Carolina, Pulitzer Prize-winning columnist and associate editor of the Washington Post and MSNBC political analyst, Eugene Robinson.
So, Gene, we now know why Bernie Sanders is leaving South Carolina early. I mean, listen, I've always told politicians that tell me about the endorsements that they have. I think endorsements don't matter. You got to go out. But I will tell you, there are two notable exceptions as far as I'm concerned. One is Jim Clyburn.
Absolutely.
In South Carolina. The other is Harry Reid in Nevada, because those two guys have their states wired like the old pros used to have their states wired. This Clyburn endorsement, pretty huge, isn't it?
Yeah, it's the best thing that could possibly have happened to Joe Biden's campaign here in South Carolina. Jim Clyburn, had been non-committal as to whether he would endorse at all, and he waited until just the moment, I think, for Biden, after Biden's much stronger performance in the debate the other night. Boom, here comes the endorsement of the most important political figure in the state. It's certainly in terms of the Democratic Party. He is the guy, and I got to was around here and went home to Orangeburg. Talked to a lot of people yesterday. I just heard a lot about Joe Biden, and also talked to a lot of people who are looking at this race like we have somehow bred an entire nation of pundits. So everybody was calculating, well, I think the Clyburn endorsement will make people more likely to vote for him. It was hard to get people to talk about actually who they were going to vote for, but it came down to most of the people I talked to. I just really got a sense that this has been probably Joe Biden's best week of the campaign, and that he'll do well on Saturday.
Yeah, so Willie, here we have once again politics going in a direction that nobody can predict, and the law of unintended consequences. Mike Bloomberg decided he had to get into this race when Elizabeth Warren moved into first place, and when Bernie Sanders was not far behind, and at the same time that a lot of Joe Biden's people were concerned he was going to finish in fourth in Iowa and New Hampshire. That's why he did. It wasn't, he had told everybody throughout the summer, I'm not doing it, I'm not doing it, I'm not doing it. And then when it looked like he was facing either a Democratic nominee who was a Sanders or a Warren, he said, I have to do it. So here we find ourselves at the end of February, and the law of unintended consequences have it that if Joe Biden has a great night on Saturday night, that if that is still Michael Bloomberg's goal, is to stop Bernie Sanders or Elizabeth Warren, he needs to drop out early Sunday morning. Because if he does not, take a look at this Texas poll. If he does not, he is actually helping Bernie Sanders win the nomination. This billionaire will be helping Bernie. This is the 2020 Democratic nomination polling out of Texas. Biden and Sanders are tied at 24 with Bloomberg at 17. This is what it would look like if Bloomberg got out of the race. Biden easily wins. He's outside the margin, and you can go ahead and put that across another 20 or 30 states. I mean, I know that would be extraordinarily tough for Bloomberg to do, but you know what? They're 45% of the way through the game after Super Tuesday. He doesn't. Mike Bloomberg, if Biden does well, and if Bloomberg stays in the race, will be the guy remembered as the politician, the billionaire who got Bernie Sanders elected.
Well, Michael Bloomberg is not going to get out before Super Tuesday because the entire rationale for his campaign is that I can put all those resources into those states, and that's when the campaign begins for me. But as you point out, he got into the race to be the alternative to Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren. He's turning out to be an alternative to Joe Biden for a lot of voters. So on Saturday, Donnie, it looks, all the signals are that Joe Biden's going to do well there. Bernie Sanders wouldn't be going to Massachusetts tomorrow and having a rally. And then on Saturday, the day of the vote in South Carolina, he wouldn't be having a massive rally on Boston Common, not in Columbia, South Carolina, if he didn't see where this was headed for Joe Biden. So what happens if we wake up on Sunday morning? Joe Biden has a lead. He's won the state of South Carolina. He looks a little bit like his campaign's been revitalized. What does Mike Bloomberg do with that?
First to Biden and then to Bloomberg, you know, this was a perfect storm in a positive way for Biden this week after the debate performance. If Biden wins, and I do think he'll win fairly substantially, that changes a lot. You know, everybody's been kind of already anointing in certain ways Bernie, and then there's almost an overreaction if somebody else has a good moment, a good day. And I think there will be an overreaction. Oh, my God, we have our anti-Bernie. To that point, if Mike Bloomberg wants to be an American hero, he would step out. And, you know, I've been saying all along, Bloomberg's got a great opportunity. I think after these first two debates, I don't think the right stuff is there. And if he came out that next day and said, not only am I getting out, I'm getting behind Biden, and Biden said, well, I'm going to make you my Secretary of State, that would change dynamics in this race in a dramatic way. I don't know if it's going to happen, but Mike Bloomberg, it's your chance to be a patriot here.
The way, John, this always happens is politicians always make the right decision about 2 weeks too late. In these presidential contests, the damage has already been done. The 20-part pile up is all over the road, and then they get out of their car and say, you know, I think it'd be best if I just give you the car keys and I'll just walk home. Thanks. In this case, there is no doubt that if Biden has a big night, Bloomberg needs to get out of the race immediately before Super Tuesday. And we can give an example, a very specific example of how Bloomberg could possibly take from Biden is Jim Clyburn. Last week, all of my sources were telling me that Clyburn was moving towards a Bloomberg endorsement, but he was going to watch the debate before he decided whether he was going to go back to the guy he originally wanted to be with, Joe Biden. Joe Biden had a great debate. I think Clyburn was going to endorse him by that point anyway, because Bloomberg had a weak first debate. But that's a great example of how Mike Bloomberg is not hurting Bernie Sanders. Mike Bloomberg is now hurting Joe Biden.
Absolutely.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.